This is the Giraffes Don't Eat Steak podcast, a show that brings you marketing stories, tips, hints, and much more. A treat for those who want to succeed in business or marketers who just want to learn.
Hello, Alex.
Hi, Erica. How are you doing?
I am good. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Very well.
Brilliant. I'm so excited today to bring to our podcast my friend Nikki Shield. Hey, Nikki, welcome.
Hi,
Nikki.
Erica. Hi, Alex. Great to be here.
So, Nikki, you and I met at networking. We were just having this chat before we started recording, and it feels like a long time ago, right?
I think so. I think we just instantly hit off on some good conversations.
About marketing, right? And about brand. And I thought, Alex, you love this conversation. So I thought you would bring Nikki to the podcast to talk about, we were having a chat about how people are building an accidental brand. So Nikki, do you want to share your philosophy with Alex and our listeners?
Thank you, Erica. Yeah, so this is something I came across with a particular contact who wanted some help with how to develop her brand. And her words were, well, I've not really done anything with it because I'm kind of scared of making a mistake with it or doing it wrong. And we went through a bit of a discovery process and went through where she's at and what sort of business she had. And then we looked at her website, having had that conversation. And it was like, well, actually, you can't really have a website or a presence with a business without having a brand presence. Because in my world, I would think you can just quite simply replace the word brand with business. Really, your brand is your business. It's everything about it, and it's the way it comes across to people in the outside world. So she had created this, what I called accidental brand. It was very plain. It was very not her. It didn't suit her, the way she worked with clients, and it didn't fit with the sort of feedback she was getting from working with clients. And so this accidental brand image was kind of harming her reach, because anybody new who didn't know her might go to her website and think, this is a bit plain and nondescript, whereas she was far from plain and nondescript. So that's where this stemmed from, really, this thought that actually you can't really have a business without having a brand presence, and if you don't purposefully create it, it's still there and it might not be serving you.
Love that. What do you think, Alex?
No, I mean, that is very true. And it's often like, even just like your own personal brand, if you're, if you're interviewing or something like that, there's a lot of body language and social cues that some people aren't really aware that they're giving off when they initially meet someone, and it's not necessarily a true reflection of who they are. It's just maybe that they're a timid person, and when they first meet someone and they don't realize the energy that they're giving off. It's kind of the same as, like you're saying, with the business. Hey, you might create just start doing something, and you're not really paying attention to the vibe or the energy that you're giving off to the other people, and it might just not, like you said, it might just be the complete opposite of what you want to do. I think I just broke up then on my internet.
It did a little bit, yeah. We'll leave our wanderers to fix it.
I think that it's that you don't want to make the wrong impression, and I think by not doing anything purposefully, especially when it comes to brand, it's quite easy to make that wrong impression. Whereas if you do a little bit of work on your brand, is all about how people feel about you, your business, what you're offering. It's all about emotions and feelings, as opposed to, some people say the difference between brand and marketing is the brand is creating the foundations and the marketing is getting it out there and telling the message. I haven't said that very well, but it's it's all about the the personality behind everything, really.
Yeah. And it just makes me think about the fact that you also need to be aware that over time you could change, right? And just recently, Alex and I met a friend of mine, Robin, who has this awesome GC index tool. If you listen to one of the podcast episodes, you'll hear all about it. But he can look at your website and through this tool tell you what the words you're using is saying. So it's all about the copy. And he was like, your website is very doing. That your website uses a lot of doing action words. It's got a lot of control and perfectionism and that end. And actually, that's where we started. When Alex and I were discussing, that's where Marketing Detectives started. But we've morphed, right, over time, that we're now into strategy. But our website, we didn't move our website along with that change.
Yeah.
And so the brand, if someone's just visiting us from, and not knowing who we are, they're going to get doers and action people. Not that we can't do that, but it's not who we want to be seen as anymore, right? We now want to be seen as thought leaders, as strategists, because that's how we've morphed our business. So I think it's also that. So it's two parts, right? When you're creating it, is to be intentional and say, what do I want people to think and feel? But second, being aware of changes in yourself, in your business, and making sure that all your artifacts, whether it's your website, your LinkedIn page, etc., morphs with you and doesn't hold you back.
Yeah, you make a really good point. The business never stands still, does it? If you're standing still, you're kind of actually going backwards. You're not moving on. You're not keeping up with trends and what's going on with your clients. And we all evolve. And if you don't evolve the way things look along with how you feel and how you act, yes, they can start to become mismatched.
I also think when you're talking about the brand as a personality, I think it's very easy to make your personality very muddy. So let's say, for example, you have a like a digital transformation company, so like turning paper-based or just random Google Sheet-based businesses into a more streamlined company.
Okay.
That's quite broad. It's very, very broad. And theoretically, you can help many, many people with many, many different issues. And like the trap that you would be in then is saying that we can help many, many people with many, many things. But then from the outsider perspective, and I've got a very specific business and a very specific problem that I need solving in terms of inefficiencies from an analog point of view. Like, I don't really know what your personality is saying, and if that personality connects with my very specific problem. So I think that's like also the problem we get with the business, because we're not creating that clear message that resonates exactly with that pain point of that person, which means you're losing your personality, because when you meet someone, you're like, I don't really know what that person is, like what their values are or something like that. They kind of seem a bit all over the place, makes you unsure of the person. But if you speak to them and on a one-on-one basis, just the person you meet, and you're like, I really understand who that person is. They've got a clear mindset of what their morals are, what political party they follow or something like that. And then you're like, instantly, you know what their personality is. And it's exactly the same for the business.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thought. Yeah, I think, what am I thinking? I was talking to someone the other day about I learned something new about somebody. I thought I knew them quite well, but it turns out there's a whole part of her life that of course I know nothing about, because we've only ever talked about business type of things. And it makes you realize that I think a lot of people talk about it from a mental health point of view. You don't know what's going on under the surface, do you? You don't know what's really there. You do judge by what you know and what you see. And I
Yeah.
think the same goes for a brand. You do judge a brand on what you see and what you know on the surface. And I think people forget that you've been on a long journey, and all your experiences and all your reference points help you create the business as the way it is right now. But people don't know that journey, and you need to tap into what it is that makes you different and unique in a way that you can express it through your visuals and through your marketing. And sometimes that's really tough because people just might not know that, but that's our job, right? To help hold the mirror up and help them see actually what are you to your customers and your clients, and what is it that they tap into, and then we translate that into either words or visuals.
Absolutely. I think one of the most difficult piece of brand work that Alex and I have done, I don't know if you'll agree with this, Alex, but was where the personality or the brand of the owner and the brand he wanted to create were very different.
Okay.
The jump was huge. The brand of the business that he wanted us to create was high tech, edgy, young. It was vibrant, and he was not. Like it was really a difficult, because he would still write the copy, right? Like he wanted to be involved in the copy and the imaging but he was bringing his own mindset into that, which was then not the brand, right? So I don't know if you agree, Alex. It was really hard to try and not hurt feelings, and just try and separate the two, and keep his head in the game of this brand, and not put his own thoughts and words and feelings in, because it's not the same. Where I think with smaller businesses, luckily, most people are creating a brand that is them, right? And so for small business owners, it's much easier, I think, when your brand and you are congruent. Like it's the same, and you can express yourself easily. Much harder when you're trying to create the opposite, right? Like a brand that's,
I mean, I'm
not who you
assuming
are.
to create that brand, he'd then be employing people of that mindset to sort of be and behave in that brand. So I guess it's probably wise for that person to slightly step away from the writing and the content creation, isn't it? If they can't embody what that brand is meant to yeah, that's an interesting one. I think, I mean, I mostly work with people that are business owners that, they bring themselves, they don't try and hide who they are from what their business is. It's one and the same thing, like you say, and then that is a much more fluid, much more authentic, really, way to approach things.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Would you agree that was one of our tougher ones, Alex?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, owner-run businesses are always tough in terms of feelings. And you're right, even if they do represent the brand personally, and like their personality is the same as the brand, it's still difficult because of, it's their baby, and it's very touchy-feely for them. But then if you have to then separate the two, that's very difficult. It's like then you have to be acting, and you're not really being authentic. And
I'm not really sure how that could genuinely work for them to even present the business themselves. It would have to be someone that
someone else is the front face.
That personality.
It's the same as with somebody who wants somebody to write their LinkedIn posts every day. I'm not saying it doesn't work, and it can work if you're then giving the personality to the person who's writing it, for example, or you're doing it in the company's personality. But if you really want to create truly authentic posts that sound authentic and sound like you to the thousands of people you've met in your life and who are now in your network on LinkedIn, it's almost impossible to hand that over. You will lose some of that authentic edge.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, the importance is in the translation piece, is in listening, is in getting inside the head or inside the minds of the business and translating that into visuals that really suit that business, but equally well talks to the right market.
Yeah.
But I
So-
don't think creating something just for the market is going to be easy to maintain, really easy to sustain that, if it doesn't actually reflect who you really are.
So how do you do that? Like from your practices when you're trying to get that understanding of the business, and so you
Question.
start building the brand.
I ask a lot of questions. I sometimes I ask a lot of questions, but I also ask questions around the business as well. And I also ask for as many testimonials as possible, because I think you can pick up, if you can pick up on the words other people are using to describe what it's like to work with them, not the results, not the this is what I got from working with this business, but this is how I felt when I worked with this business. And it's those adjectives that I think are really telling in terms of that relationship they have with the customers. And then that in turn helps me to think more intuitively about designing. I don't try to design by the book, as it were. Someone said to me not that long ago about colors. Oh, I'm sure you've got color theory and the psychology of color and all that to hand. I'm like, actually, I don't use any of that. I'm aware of it, but I don't disagree with color theory and the psychology of color, and red means this and blue means that, but I don't design a brand and go, okay, you want to be like this, therefore I'm going to use blue because it means that. I look for an intuitive sense of, this is a story you're telling, and these feel like the right colors to tell that story, or these colors have a sense of surprise or interest, or this color combination covers these two parts of your business personality. It's an intuitive process, but to get there, I need to have conversations with business owners and key decision makers in the business and pick up on the between the lines nuances of what they're saying to get a feel for that personality. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think it is always about the nuance, especially if for many brands they're competing in a cluttered market. And as you're saying, there are a lot of brands that have the same color, and there is a reason for that, because I know, let's say insurance or something like that, a lot of them go for colors that feel kind of safe,
Yeah,
blue colors or something like that. But you do still see the companies in those industries standing out, even though they might have a similar kind of color theme or something like that. It's because they're picking out the nuances
yeah.
of what their brand stands for and what it means to the customer. So
They might be offering very similar things, but the way they talk about it might be slightly different, and that'll make someone feel different. And we can reflect that in both design and in marketing, copy, and words.
Exactly. And that's the key of being specific. I think the key is always to be specific, and you can get that, like you're saying, from testimonials. And also, like when Erica and I were working with a business that had a call center, so we often listen to the calls with clients, which is a really great way of understanding what people are actually saying in real time, not being sort of interviewed about what they think about the business, because often they will say, oh, I'm going to say something that they want me to say, you know, but if they're on a call and they're fighting over the price or they're fighting over what package they're going to get, blah, 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 then you get the real truth of what they're thinking. And extracting that is really, really powerful in creating messaging and frameworks for the business.
I love that you use the word truth there. That's really important, I think, is to pick up on the truths in the business. I often get asked to do PowerPoint presentation slides and templates for proposals and things like that. And I always ask for an example proposal, a previous proposal, or a previous piece of work that I can base on that for that same reason. It's like listening into the calls. If I just have a logo and some colours and they want me to create a template, it's like, what am I creating it for? What are you going to say when you use this? How are you going to use this? So I do it the other way around. I say, look, share an example of one of your proposals or one of your documents that you want a template for, and I will base it on some real information, because then it's going to be more useful. Otherwise, I'll give you a template and then you'll be like, oh, but what I've got doesn't fit that box, or it's like square peg, round hole, isn't it? Yeah. Sometimes I ask people what they might listen to music-wise. Sometimes that's quite telling.
That's really cool.
It's just actually, or if the business was a car, what car would it be? You know, just to get if the people are really struggling to pin down what their personality is, what's unique, different. There's other ways to tap into that.
Yeah, that reminds me of something I heard the other day. I think I was listening to a podcast and they're saying is, for example, when Eric and I are writing our bios for our website, like we tried to write our bios and we're like, this is not working. So we're like, well, how about we write each other's bios?
There you go. Yeah.
And it's much easier to do that because you kind of move out of your own insecurities and you just look at the person as you see them, and you don't have any problem saying it because that's who they are and it's easy for you to do that. And it's the same with if you ask a business owner, like, personally, who are you? What do you represent? It'd be really difficult.
Yeah.
But if you say to them something like, if you can think of any fictional person or non-fiction person, real or alive or dead or whatever, that you associate most with, who would that be? And let's talk about, like, say, a superhero. Which one do you relate to the most? And if they say Batman, for example, you know, maybe that tells you quite a lot about their personality and the morals that they have. And it can be really helpful to help you get a guide of, you know, where the head is really at.
And then the other thing to do is to ask them to do a bit of a review on another business. It might be in the same sector, it might be just a business they admire or have they like the way they've done their branding, and say, okay, well, why do you like that? What do you like about it? And what do you think works about it? And why does that appeal to you? And that's also quite telling, because they're not aware that they're talking about their perspective. They're just reviewing something, like you say, they're taking themselves out of the picture and focusing on something else. And I think to bring it back to that accidental brand, if you don't do some of this deep thinking, if you like, and awareness, sometimes we do this and you think, well, actually your branding's spot on, you know, that's great, but it will give them the confidence to know that their branding's spot on, and they can, you know, stand up straight, hold their head up, and know it's got their back, if you like. But if you don't know, there's a lot of people out there going, oh, you're a designer, oh, what do you think of our logo? I'm like, well, I can't judge your logo until I find out who you are and what your business is and all of these things, because what matters is whether it's right for you.
That's Eric's favorite question. When
It's
I say
my
favorite, when I say favorite, I mean worse.
And then I get annoyed with people who answer knowing nothing. Like, stop, you're making it worse.
Some people put on LinkedIn, I've had 3 logos designed, which one do you think's best? It's like, well, you've got no idea how to judge it. Give me some context. Oh,
The other part of the accidental brand I was thinking about is, and especially husband and wife teams, for example,
okay.
or where there's two business partners, etc., and they haven't had this conversation
Mm,
because then actually they're creating two and they don't realize it.
yeah.
And that's something that's become quite apparent to me over the last few years is where you start seeing two disparate brands being created, right?
Yeah.
And they may have the same color scheme or the same, but there's nuances to it that just make you feel like this is not the same as that one, right? And I'm not a designer, I'm not into that. So when I can pick it up, I think that's already like, hey.
Yeah. I've certainly had it before where I've worked on branded collateral, and I love to encourage all the key decision makers, business leaders, to get in the same room and do a bit of a workshop together on the brand. And it's surprising how many times it's the first time they've ever had a conversation about it.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I've even found where there's 2 or 3 directors, and one of the directors has gone off and designed their own business cards in a different style because they don't like the color red or whatever it is that everyone else is using. It's like, but hold on a minute. So you've got completely different business cards and it looks like a different company. How does that work?
I've seen that before. When you said that, I was like, oh my God, I've worked with someone where of the business they've done that before, and for some reason I can't grab where that was from, but I've seen that as well, and
It's always the saying, don't tell marketing, right? Like we're gonna do all the stuff, don't tell marketing, and that's when someone's gonna go off brand, right? They're like deliberate, they know they're gonna be in trouble, but they want to do their own stuff. It's just don't tell marketing.
There's a whole nother podcast there, Erica, in brand policing. Oh.
And it's so interesting because if you're not in marketing, a lot of people do think that the brand policing is just that, right? It's about a rule book. And it's not, it's about creating that consistency of messaging, right? Because even without the copy, that's the consistency that everyone who looks at every aspect of your business from whatever direction is going to get the same feel. And that's all we're trying to do, right? That's all it is saying wherever anyone is looking at our business, they're going to feel the same way. And so breaking that, you're creating a different feel, which someone starts to think, wait, is this the same business? Am I in the same business? And it's not logical thought. I think this is also because they're like, no one said anything. Of course, they're not saying it because it's not a logical thought that crosses their mind. It's a subconscious thought of just a little. And then the next time you see another one and you go, and all it's doing is building doubt, subtle doubt in your head about this business. And then one day you'll be like, I'm going in a different direction and you're not going to know why, right?
Yeah.
I see it when people do events, and sometimes they do one-off events for the business. It's still for the same business, right?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, well, this is a one-off event, so it doesn't need to look the same as everything else. I'm like, would it not be helpful if it did? Yeah.
It's like it's a very unsexy word, but standardize is really, really important, especially if your business is scaling, because without something without a standardization of a process or a brand or a sales script or something like that, it's impossible to keep things unified and measurable as you scale, and you completely lose control. It's like having a call center and just saying, just say what you like to the client, just try and sell it in the best way that you can. Go. That's not going to work. You need to have something that's structured. And I think that also applies to branding.
Although I think the word I mentioned brand policing kind of in jest, but actually it's an unhelpful phrase because it suggests it's restrictive.
Exactly.
And actually it's not. Branding can be fun, right? It's even if you have a brand book and some guidelines, they're just that. They're called brand guidelines for a reason. They're a guideline on how to make it stay on brand, but it doesn't mean that's all you can do.
Yeah.
It means if you do something new, remember the ethos, remember the values, remember all the things that we're trying to get across, and make sure it fits in with that. It's not that this has to be in a square box and it has to be blue and it has to be this size and it has to have this point size of font. It's like, actually, no, that the guide is there to get the look and feel right. And that's why I talk about visual language in that sense. It's creating a visual language that keeps you standardized, if you like, keeps you giving out the same message from a personality point of view, yet it should be flexible. It needs to be moldable to fit the different needs of the business.
Absolutely. So it's not about copy paste.
And I think that sometimes the issue there is we all have our superpowers, right? And some people find it really hard to take a brand guide and do a new thing within the same style. They don't know how to keep it on brand, even though they can see the brand guide. Sometimes it's hard to do that interpretation, and that's where I do quite a bit of work in writing, designing presentations for people. They've got a PowerPoint template, they know what the colors are, but they just can't quite make it look right. And I can take the content and go, right, this is how we can do this bit, and this is what we're going to pick up on from the brand guide to make sure it's on brand. And because you want it to look and feel in this way, we can do this to continue that. I can bring that along and help them with that.
Absolutely. The other aspect of accidental brand I was thinking about is a couple of years ago, Alex and I did a workshop with senior managers in a business. And what we did is we took them all aside one by one. And actually, we've done this a few times. And we interviewed them. We recorded them just saying, describe the business. Like, was just describe the business. What is it we do? Who's the clients? Like, just describe the business. And then, but we took them out separate and then played it back to the whole team. And the disparate, just listening to the nuances across that team. Or yes, so if your sales team is pointing one direction and portraying one kind of, and your marketing team is doing something else, and your claims team is doing something else, it was an insurance business, and you have a problem, right? Like if each head of the area has a different way of portraying the brand, already you looking at 4 or 5 different businesses actually, for anyone from the outside, right? But and again, they hadn't realized this until we did that piece of work. It's just, okay, listen to how you're all describing the business. You're not all agreeing.
That's that holding up the mirror bit of it, isn't it? It's not often something you can do for yourself. You need someone to come and go, actually, let's do this exercise and let's open up what's going on. I've done that before with a written exercise, a post-it note type of exercise where independently I've got the directors to write down what words do you want other people to describe the business? What words do you want them to use to describe the business? If someone was going to write a review, for example, if someone was going to refer you and talk about you to somebody else, what do you want them to say? What words do you want them to use? And that's always quite telling as well.
I mean, and it's the same in creating. We've had the joy of creating values, right? So businesses that haven't got any values, but then getting everyone to say, what do you think the values are? And then going, all right, you're all not on the same page. we need to agree, and then make sure that's visible throughout the business, right?
And
So
taking
that's
them
fun
through,
exercise.
yeah, taking them through that process helps them then understand why the marketing is the way it is, and then they're more likely to adhere to it, aren't they? They're more likely to get behind it. rather than creating their own little campaign without telling marketing.
We can only hope. We can only hope. So just some tips, Nikki, for our listeners. How do you make sure you're not creating an accidental brand?
Being intentional about what you do and knowing why you're doing what you're doing. If you're creating some graphics or creating a social media post and you want to find an image for that post, just think about why you're picking this image and what is it saying about your brand and how's it going to make people feel. Don't just pick an image because it suits a topic or that particular bit of content. Pick the image because it suits your overall business values and how you want people to feel about your business.
Great advice. Great advice. Alex, any tip from you?
I think I'll just echo what Nikki was saying earlier about just being aware of the personality that you're portraying. Put the mirror up and have a look at it and say, is that what I want? Is that how I should be reflected? Is that what I want people to see me as? And just sort of, try and take that step back and understand what is that personality you're giving off.
Yeah, great tips, great tips. So Nikki, if anyone wants to get hold of you to do this awesome brand work or get a PowerPoint presentation redone, how can we get hold of you?
Well, I'm active on LinkedIn, so that's always a good place to find me. It's Nikki Shield, and the business is Designs Like These. Then there's my website. I also do a monthly newsletter. It's short, it's visual. I share a few insights similar to what we've discussed here today. I generally share a few insights from a blog that I've written, and then you can read more about that. And it also has a fun little spot the difference puzzle each month, so that you can have a 5-minute breather from your day and see if you can find all those differences and go back to your childhood. I love a puzzle and a spot the difference. Yeah, so that's you can sign up to my newsletter on my website as well.
Fantastic. Any last words to share with our listeners, Nikki?
I think if graphics aren't your superpower, you still need them. You still need to do your marketing, right? And you still need to do it well and have great visuals. If you don't feel like you've got the toolbox to do that, you can get professional help from a designer to help you build that cohesive set of brand visuals. It's your visual language, and it's something that you can use again and again, and it actually then makes marketing much easier.
Love that. Alex, any parting words?
No, I think I'll just stick with my last ones. We're good there.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. It's been really awesome. Thank you for listening, everyone. Make sure you are not building an accidental brand. Make sure that you are purposeful in what you're doing. Thank you, Nikki. It's been fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been lovely to chat, as always.
Thank you, Nikki.
Always. Thanks,
Thank you, Erica.
Alex. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
That wraps up this episode of Giraffes Don't Eat Steak. Thanks for joining us. I hope you found value in our discussion and got some new ideas to apply to your own business. Tune in next week for another round of marketing insights and inspiration. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We appreciate you listening. Catch you next time on Giraffes Don't Eat Steak.